All right. Welcome to January 2022. Happy New Year to everyone watching this and to the team, of course. We are back this month, or last month rather. We read How to Win Friends and Influence People, a timeless classic written in 1936 by Dale Carnegie. So many of you watching this probably have read this or have heard of it before. We're going to talk about it today. So it's very exciting. Yeah, let's just jump right in. I think that's the best way. So we all had a chance to read it. Everyone submitted their book reports, and I had a chance to review it. The reason I chose this book is because the name of the book, Influence People, it sounds a bit manipulative, and I actually think the title of this book is really bad versus kind of like the inside. Right? I guess it's not what's on the cover, it's what's on the inside that counts in this case. So How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think my general thoughts about this book is that, and I'm sure this will come up a lot in this call, is that there's a lot of common sense in this, right? There's a lot of common sense in this. And anytime I hear someone say, oh yeah, there's a lot of common sense in this book, a lot of us wrote that in our book reports. Whenever I hear that, the next thing that comes to mind is that, well, common sense is not so common though, actually, right? If you've ever visited the comment section of your favorite social media website, you will know that to be true. So common sense is not so common. And I also don't agree that necessarily everything in this book we should kind of be rigid and adhere to. There's a lot of like bite-sized nuggets, which I really appreciate, and a lot of quotables, which I'm sure will come up today. So yeah, let's jump right in. So in terms of how to win friends and influence people, I think let's start with what we liked about the book, or what liked and disliked about the book. So who would like to go first?
I can go first.
Sure.
I actually read this book during my first year of college, and it was a transformative experience, to say the least. And reading it now as an older person, there's so many gems. There's so many good takeaways. I really like the fact that you can use these in business. You can use them in your social life. You can use them with family. It's really like just overall good stuff to know and to practice. But yeah, that's I think what I like the most. Just how relatable and how educational it can be for both business and real life.
Okay, good.
I go next.
Yeah.
What I liked about the book, Riaz and team, pretty much everything. I loved the book. I read the book for the first time, so you can imagine the excitement. Honestly, I thought I don't know what was I expecting from this book. I'm like, how to win friends. It's like it's going to be like those cliche suggestions and things like that. But I was pleasantly surprised. Like there are some beautiful kind of suggestion, recommendation, how to handle a situation. And as Matthias mentioned, it is not only for professional life, it is for personal life as well. And just because we are recording this session and people are going to watch it, if you see reviews for this book that, oh, it is manipulative, sometimes, like, honestly, it's not. It's just like it's an honest effort from the writer to go ahead and let us know that you don't have to be manipulative. He's not asking us to lie. He's just asking us, or recommending us rather, to take genuine interest, right? And he has explained really well the difference between flattering someone and genuinely being interested in someone, which is the key difference. So yeah.
Totally true. I think if you were to read the first couple of chapters, you might get that impression. And then you read the first couple of chapters, went blah, and then threw it away. You might be left with the impression that this is just how to manipulate people into doing what you want them to do. And actually, I think, yes, to your point, Sonali, I agree, because he did mention very clearly at times, no one wants to be flattered. And I think the key is to have a genuine interest in the other person, in our situation, in our clients, a genuine interest. And you can take yourself there. I think if you can't get yourself into a place where you're genuinely interested and you genuinely care, you probably shouldn't be in this business. I know that this particular book was used, you know, prolifically in the advertising world, especially back then. And that would be why, right? But nothing good comes from just being generally disinterested and neutral about everything. So I think that's fair enough. I also thought that it was actually quite a funny book. It was quite interesting sometimes, just kind of like the old-fashioned kind of humor that came through. I love the use of the old terminology. Some of the stories were like so outdated that they were like charming but still relevant, right? And I thought that was amazing. Like, you know, he's telling tales about how he went to school once barefoot across a field, and that's like, wow, this was written some time ago. Like, but yeah, I think that some of the key things for me are, I suppose, a couple of things, the things that I've kind of grown to appreciate as I've gotten older and have probably implemented myself. But a couple that really stood out was, you know, the need to smile all the time, you know. And I think about Ryan Water and how he says, you know, your people emulate your energy. Everyone around you emulates your energy. So you might as well go into every situation and with a smile on your face. And he mentioned a story about a guy who, before he went into a sales meeting, he would stand outside and he would think about all the things that he was grateful for, his children and his life in general. And that would make him smile. And then he would open the door and he would go in that kind of positive mood. I think that is important. I think the way that we put ourselves across in life in general is very important. And also the other thing too that I thought, well, there were many things, but I haven't got all day and I've got to go to the dentist. So avoid the argument.
Yeah.
How true is that for today? Not today. No one's arguing today, but in modern times, you see on social media someone with like a passionate opinion about something, shot down. It's just don't bother getting into an argument with anybody, because generally speaking, the harder you push to convince that person that you're right, the more they dig their heels in. And I think that's typical of how things are today, quite frankly. And so the best advice is avoid the argument as best as you can. Having a child who's 4 years old and having had children who are very young, you know that. You learn that from being a father. There's no point getting into an argument about it. So anyway, that's all I've got to say.
I still try and win arguments and it doesn't.
You do you?
No, I know. It doesn't work out very well, to be honest. But yeah, I agree. I think like the genuine interest part, I'm sure has like spoken well to me. I feel like a lot of the points that you raised are quite profound in terms of like the thesis of the book. But for me, genuine interest, smiling, you know, really, and genuine, I think is the key word there, right? Because we've all met someone who is interested in you, and you can tell in the back of their head there's like some kind of agenda as to like why they're engaging with you, or you can kind of tell that there's a different motive. And you can kind of tell it yourself too, where you're like, I'm talking to someone, it's like, is it just to like convince them or sell them, or it's like, no, let's take that layer away and just actually get to know people, because that's so important. And I'm sure everyone on the call can understand like that this book has had a pretty big influence on my life, just the way I am. You're probably thinking that as you went along. Good, thanks for the lessons. What other lessons did we capture? Listening, yeah.
Like actually hearing people. Because I don't know, I think a lot of people feel unheard through a lot of their lives, and just having someone feel like you've actually heard them, I think it's really impactful.
You're good at that, by the way, Leslie. That is something that you're a really good active listener. So it makes sense that resonated with you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something I really do try with.
I'm working on it. I do listen well, but I also interrupt more than I would like to more recently. That's something I need to work on this year, because I used to like not interrupt people, and I used to like criticize, hey, I hate interrupters, and now I've become one of those kind of people. So I'm going to work on active listening and not interrupting. Other lessons?
Yeah, on that note, like the chapter where they talk about showing interest in other people can get you like places. Like I'm not usually very disinterested, but I do have the tendency to get carried away. Like if something interests me, I am so passionate that I talk about it, and I don't realize that I like I realized that I talk a lot, so I need to like tune that down and listen more, because I think I'm not a very good listener, because I have a lot of ideas and I sometimes want to just get those across. But when I read that, I'm like, okay, I need to really make it a point to listen more and like be genuinely interested and take the time to like get to know the other person's side before I talk. So yeah, that was like a big part that I really liked. There was a quote which said like, if you can get a lot in 2 months by showing interest in someone else, then you're trying to get them interested in you for 2 years. And that one was really powerful.
Yeah.
And even like the examples that like he put like with every chapter. So it wasn't just quotes. So he would like give a quote and then give like 4 or 5 examples of that story. I really, really like those. And I don't remember all the names, but there was one guy that he mentioned, like Charles Schwab, and he kept talking about him like in multiple stories.
Yeah.
That one was really good. Like I really liked the way like he presented like why he got the promotion and why he was like a good leader.
So I want to dig into the active listening part, because it's something that you and I both said that we want to work on. So what are, for those that are good listeners, what are some of the benefits that you derive or receive from being a good listener?
It gives you an opportunity to circle back and mention things that interest that person as well, right? So like if I'm listening to, say, Sonali, if we're talking and I'm listening to what you're telling me, I'm taking notes, which I have to do sometimes. I find that my memory lets me down at times for certain details. But basically it means that when I have a conversation with you, maybe in a couple of months' time, if something comes up that is relevant, I can relate that to you, because I've taken the time to understand you, to get to know you a little better. And I think that then you feel a lot better in that situation as well. You feel a lot more comfortable, right? And it can start up another conversation. I find that active listening creates a cyclic situation, really beneficial situation.
Do you think people like, because like Jackie and I were on a call last week, and one of the clients went on a bit of a healthy tangent about like where they're at, and then I kind of bookmarked 4 or 5 points in my head. I'm Jackie, I think you remember the call I'm talking about, right? And then I said, well, for this point we're going to do this, and for that point, oh yeah, you're right, but we can do that, and for this point I kind of disagree. And the client actually said, oh, I'm surprised that you were listening that well and understood and remembered, right? Yeah. So I certainly see some of the benefits when it is applied. Do you think that sometimes, and this is a question for anyone, do you think sometimes we listen but then fail to kind of apply the listening? Like you were saying, Michael, like, you know, circling back and bringing back points that you had heard. I find sometimes that sometimes we're good listeners, but then we don't actually apply our listening, if that makes sense.
You mean like hearing it versus actually listening?
Well, hearing it and then coming back and saying like I heard you, like acknowledging that you heard the other person, and then later coming back and saying, hey, you know, I heard you and this is what I think about that you mentioned a week ago, or what have you.
I think it can happen to any of us. In my case, I do sometimes have to take note of exact quotes just so I can reflect on that conversation later and say, this is going to be my approach the next time I have a conversation with this person. Because if this person is telling me that this is important to them, then I'm gonna reinforce that and maybe start the next conversation acknowledging that they understand that is important to them. So I create like, and I like how even if the book was saying yes, forget like try to avoid any arguments. He makes a difference between arguments and disagreements, because there can be disagreements. So when you start a conversation reinforcing what you understood from that person, that reinforcing that you listen to that person, and you remind them of the common or the ultimate goals between those involved, it creates a perfect like environment and a perfect way to move forward and not focus on if anything has happened in the past. So we don't focus on what has gone wrong, but what keeps us together right now, and what we're working towards. So I think listening works to build that right environment to move forward. Mm-hmm.
I think that's also tied to empathy a little bit as well. That was like a big thread in the book, is empathizing with the people around you. And I think if you can empathize with them, you're probably more prone to listening to them better and implementing that listening, right? So stepping into their shoes and seeing things through their eyes, probably, you know, there's a better chance that you're going to implement those things.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and I think another part of being like, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Another part of being a good listener is not just like listening and then taking notes, but also like making sure that you're understanding what that person is saying. So like not, and like following up is from what they're saying is like, is this what you meant by what you said? Because that's my understanding. And then making sure like you're actually on the same page.
Good point. It's not just listening, but it's like interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because your interpretation of something could be very different from what my interpretation is of the same situation. And like to Khalil's point, like seeing there's two sides to every situation, or maybe three sides, you know. So
it's funny because to that point, sometimes as the speaker who's trying to communicate, sometimes we think that the other person is listening or is interpreting it the first time the same way we said it. But you know, anytime we're rolling out any initiatives kind of on with our team, you know, you'll hear us mentioning it on the Monday call, and then we'll mention it again in the email, and then on Slack, and then it's like excited united. It's like 5 months of excited united, right? Or like, you know, demand results now, or fired up, or, you know, these types of things. The first time it doesn't catch, but then after a while it does. And I think that's another, like when we do things like, for example, email marketing, right? Our clients always think, oh, are we doing too much email marketing? Like, you know, when we're sending it like 10 times, well, really the recipient's probably going to open it like once, you know, or the recipient's only going to see the ad on their newsfeed once, right? So sometimes we need to over communicate in order for the message to be heard and interpreted. Sorry, Roy, you were gonna say?
Yeah, I just, totally agree with Khalil about the common theme in the book is about empathy, and many of the tips and like one of the suggestions is this is sort of surrounded by like empathy. And I think, and I've read this book a long time ago, and I have like used, or at least tried to use, many of the techniques. And I've spoken to a lot of people about this book too, and a lot of people who don't like it and feel like it is one of those kind of like manipulative, or you're trying to be you're not being like genuine, kind of miss the point. And I think it's because some people have more empathy than others, and I think some people who are particularly empathetic will see these tips that way, and not use these tips like genuinely, but like sort of like a superficial way.
Yeah, I think ultimately I was saying to Riaz, sort of half in jest yesterday, it's a book about how not to be a bit of a knobhead, basically.
I think the word you used was dick.
Yeah, I decided not to go down that path.
That's okay, I said it.
I suppose knobhead is the same thing.
Yeah, this is officially a rated PG-13 video.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's just, you know, how to treat people with a degree of respect, how to listen to them, and how to basically respond to people properly. And I think his message is, if we all do that, like, imagine how productive everything could be.
I think it's more relevant than ever, though. Like in modern day, it's like it's such an individualistic society, and like it's every man for himself, right? So sometimes we need these reminders, and I think this was a really good one.
Yeah.
Paul, did you have any lessons you want to share?
Yeah, well, to Michael's point, being a good person is really like the big takeaway from that book, right? And how you go about that is, you know, criticizing less, empathizing with other people. These are all really key takeaways from the book. I actually had one story that resonated with me, which was a parenting story about how his child was bugging him. And I think his kid is like 4 years old or something, so I can relate. And his kid was bugging him, interrupted him while he was in his study reading a book or something, and he reprimanded the child, and the child went away. And then he went back and he sat with his kid and apologized, and he felt really terrible. And in the end, he realized that he's holding his son to the same standards that he holds himself or grown-ups. And you can't do that. So it's really about that empathy and putting yourself in that other person's shoes, because a 4-year-old's mind doesn't work the same way a grown-up's mind does. So by having that empathy and that patience, you can really be a better person. And being kind and patient with your child is going to get a lot further results than yelling at them, right? So there was a really good takeaway for me as a parent in there. I mean, there were multiple. I love this book. And I really think it fits well with all of the books we've read to date. From a sales and marketing standpoint, everything in this book and story brand and spin selling, they're all brilliant pieces that work together. They really emphasize the same messaging, that the customer is first, or the person you're dealing with is first. You're just part of their story, back to story brand. But yeah. I love this book. I love all of the ones we've read so far. So, and I just love how they all work together. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this.
It's a great observation, that, Riaz. Really great. Like you've said, all 3 books kind of work in harmony with one another. Yeah, makes sense.
Good. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Other lessons learned?
Like the swapping the but for an end when you're giving feedback. That was a big one for me. Especially because I think we all, when you're saying, oh, Mom, thank you so much for this, but, and then, it's going like, there's something happening, there's something wrong that it's coming. So I think that was a big takeaway for me. And I want to start implementing that one, because you really want to be constructive when you give feedback.
Excellent. Other lessons?
Sincerity is how important being sincere is.
Yeah.
Because I can say nice things to somebody, but if I don't mean it, they're not going to buy it. So,
Right.
And then that just hurts your relationship more than helps it, right?
I think a big part of it is also like being sincere, genuine about, like, I don't think that we should also, I guess one of the criticisms, if anything, is like, we shouldn't dismiss our feelings about certain things. Like in the moment, you kind of you might temper your anger or dismay about something to be sincere or authentic in that moment. But I think it's also not healthy necessarily to like bottle up your sincere feelings or genuine feelings about something if they're not positive either, right? So I think it's about trying to identify or find that balance, because otherwise people might just think, oh yeah, it's a bit fluffy, right? And it's like it's a pipe dream, it's not real, right? So I think if we can kind of layer on the fact that you need to have some degree of realism when applying these techniques, that humans aren't always happy and sincere and genuine and and empathetic and all those things, and identify our own shortcomings in that process.
He really does, though, touch on the human element when he tells stories like about Abraham Lincoln and stuff, that, and even himself, they made mistakes early on. They wrote those angry letters to people, or they criticized somebody thoroughly, but then they changed at some point in their life, right? They made positive affirmation to become that better person, to maybe stop doing what was causing negative impact in their life. So there really is that human side to it, because people make mistakes, and it's about what you learn or take away from those mistakes, and then how you apply it to become a better person moving forward.
Good point.
Just to piggyback off of that, I love the ask questions instead of like give orders. And I've actually experienced this, as a graphic designer, you're going to get critiques, you're going to get advice, orders per se. But I've noticed that when people, ask questions, instead of just being like, can you change that to blue? Instead, they're like, do you think there's a better color for that? Or do you think there's this and that, And I really like that. And I think that's a great way to not only learn, but also like, a it becomes a team effort. You know, when you're asking a question, you know, you figure out an answer and whatnot. I might need a couple to get to the right thing, but you know, it sticks in your head, and it makes you feel like you both worked on that rather than someone just being like, change that, you know. So I think that can be applied in a lot of different ways, but I really like that.
Which ties into the golden rule, which I had heard before. We don't like to be treated like robots and doers. We like people to explain what their thoughts are behind their suggestions, and that's part of constructive feedback as well. So I'm so glad. I'm guilty, Matthias. So I'm glad that works.
It works perfectly.
So just to recap, who wants to share the golden rule?
Treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yeah, do unto others. Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. Other lessons?
I like
I
the
really,
yeah, right.
sorry, I'll go. Yeah, the Socratic Method is really interesting. And I've tried this, and it's not easy. But like, try to, when having a discussion, try to talk about things that you have in common with first, to get more yeses, and that inertia of like yeses can steer, like I think this is sort of like the influence people part of it is, you know, you want to be able to convince somebody of doing something, and if you start with a lot of yeses, you know, when you ask for like to close something, you know, you'll get a yes. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
that was very spin selling ish to me, that chapter. I was like, am I reading spin selling again? What's going on here?
I commonly refer to that as appease and influence. If you ever heard me say appease and influence, it's kind of, let's do it their way, because we do experience this sometimes with clients as well, right? Where they want to do it their way, and then we'll say, okay, let's try it your way, and then we'll do it our way, right? And or even like, you know, if you want to build trust with someone, tell them a secret, right? Like, you know, if you reveal a secret about yourself to that person, they're more likely to open up about something that's personal to them as well, right? And again, not in a manipulative way, do it in a sincere way, right? But that's another way to bridge kind of that connection there.
One other thing I wanted to just talk about is when it says, if you're wrong, admit it. To me, that's a big one. Not easy, but it's a huge one.
That is a huge one. I try and do it a lot. Not make mistakes, but admit them when I've made them. Ileana, did you want to share some lessons?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that one of the ones that I really, really like from the book, and that I continue to like and continue to use, is the importance of someone's name. As somebody with a different name, it's really great when people, first time you meet them, they say your name right, or they take the time to really learn how to say it, learn how to spell it. And when he told like the story about the guy with a really complicated name, and then he's like practicing over and over, then when he walks in, he can say the person's name, they're like, oh yeah, like this is great. It instantly creates like that great kind of trust in factor, and it shows that you care about the person, and that because their name is them, it's everything, it's like who they are. So that part is really important. And yeah, I really like that. That's one of the biggest lessons that I learned from that.
It's a good point. When people call me Riaz, I do instantly dislike them. So
yeah.
So I've got a funny story right around that, and it happened this week in a cold email I sent out to somebody I don't know. I'm prospecting them, and I spelled their company name wrong in the email. And that is all this lady cared about. I will never get any further with her anymore, but I spelled their company wrong. She sent me an email back to correct me, and that was it. Just to correct me and tell me she wasn't interested. So it is so important to spell people's names, their companies, all of that stuff correctly. Yeah, it was just funny timing that finished reading that part of the book, and I screwed up.
I get a lot of Razzie. A lot of people call me Razzie.
Well, you've also been called Rizzio before as well. That was my favorite. Hey, Rizzio.
I remember that.
Paul, I actually have a bit of a funny story as well on that. And it's basically in college, my copywriting professor, Mr. Jig Vault, if you're watching, shout out to you. He's fantastic. And since day one, first year, he made it a basic rule that if you ever misspelled a client's name, someone's name wrong or anything, he would give you a 0 on any assignment, any project, doesn't matter how many hours. And since, well, I learned the hard way, as a lot of the students in his class, that's like the biggest thing, because it's so important, right? Like that's the first introduction. And if you mess that up, they're not going to care for anything else that you have to say, both as a client, as a person, whatever it is. So that's a huge thing, just names.
Same in the journalism program, I think, Ileana and
Yep.
Yeah.
That was automatic F. That was the first time, and that was the first and only time, and it made me cry. So never again.
How you learn.
Happened. Yeah, and I met Jigbolt too. He was great. He was at grad. So
I'm off to the dentist now. See ya.
All right. Take care of your teeth.
Yeah, the name thing, I also really enjoyed reading about that too. And something that I think was, you know, everything people say that a lot of this book is common sense, but I don't think that's common sense. I don't think people realize how important names are. Mm-hmm. And after reading that, I really became paranoid about getting like spelling names right. So like in emails, it's also kind of a delicate thing in terms of like people who have names like Dave or David or, you know, Mike or Michael, like how you address them. I usually look at their like email signature and seeing how they reference themselves, and I'll use that normally in like email correspondence. Even if they like in person, they'll use like the more informal name, but in emails I usually try to match what their signature would say.
Erica, do you have some?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say like sometimes because I have trouble remembering names and like pronouncing names. So when I do meet somebody, I always like I'll ask how to pronounce it, and then like I'll in the back of my head or like I'll write it down how it might sound like another word, and then like I'll actually like write it down so like it's so I can sound it out properly like the next time when I because I don't remember it. So like, for example, Riaz, like if I met you for the first time and I asked you how to pronounce your name, you'd say Riaz. But then if I say the next time I meet you and I might not remember how to pronounce it correctly, but I'll write it down as like Reeaz or something. So like it helps me to like sound it out properly the next time I meet you.
When I have a little bit of a hack here, when I don't remember someone's name at usually in a business networking context, when my wife is with me or someone, I'll go to them and be like, introduce yourself to that person. They're like, oh hi, I'm this person, what's your name? And then they say their name and I'm like, oh yeah, Bob, long time Bob, it's been a while, missing you, bud, Bob. So I guess maybe that takes the sincerity part out of the whole book, but you know, that's just a little hack there. If you ever want me to introduce you to someone, let me know, and then you'll know their name, and then I'll know their name. Cool.
And while we're on the name topic, like I found something interesting in the name chapter. So where he talks about how he said this guy's name, whose name was Nick, but he said the whole name. Like I used to think that when you have like say your name was Riaz something after it, and I call you Riaz, just Riaz, that's like shortening your name, like makes it that we are closer because you don't have nicknames for people you're not close to. But then the book said something interesting, like something like if you say their full name right, they actually would appreciate it more. Whereas like my perception was if you address someone with their full name, you're not really close. It's like much distant. But yeah, I'm going to try that with a few people who like people just like make their name shorter or just Dave, just Nick. But,
so does that mean I can't call you V anymore?
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
I don't know. I don't mind. I used to think that like nicknames are for people who are close to you. So,
I think so.
It's just interesting that this book said like their full name is like really important to a person. So I don't know. I don't mind being called a weeb, by the way. So,
But you're not excited about it, clearly.
I am. I'm just saying, like, I'm not sure now because now I have two like varying opinions. So maybe we can like do a poll who likes what. Like,
Okay. Yeah,
I
we
don't
can
know.
definitely do that. We can definitely do that. I don't have host controls here, so we'll come back to that. But yeah, I'm gonna keep calling you V if that's okay. So there you
That's
go.
okay. Yeah.
I kind of just voluntold you. This is like irreparable damage to our relationship that's happening live on YouTube and Facebook. Okay, other lessons learned. Khalil, did you have any you want to?
Let me just take a look here. I guess something that's relevant for me is the quote here that the road to someone's heart is to talk about something that they love. So that's just highlighting the importance of research, even when it comes to talking to a client. Maybe get a little bit of their personality, their background, their personal story infused in there somehow, and then that relationship should, be better because of it. So I really like that one.
Sorry, can I speak to that one? Sorry.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
On more than one occasion, from a sales perspective, and Paul, you'll appreciate this. I'll kind of creep the prospect on LinkedIn and Facebook, and then go to their interests and go to what they've liked on Facebook, and then find out what football, hockey team they like, or musical band that they like, or what kind of genre of music, or what kind of movie they like, and then bring that up usually on the next call. I'll out myself. I'll say, yeah, I was creeping on.
Well, I've been prospecting people in Texas for the last while, so that's why this stays in the background for all my. I am a genuine Cowboys fan, but it stayed there ever since. Yeah.
So don't prospect anyone in Green Bay, basically, is the point.
Well, it's going to be 49ers, so I'm staying away from San Francisco. Playoffs start this week. One of my favorite things in this book, as we're talking about quotes and things, and this, again, it goes right back to like StoryBrand and even Spin for that matter. But one of my favorite quotes was, "The only way on earth to influence other people is to talk about what they want and to show them how to get it." And that really comes down to everything that we do in a lot of cases, right? All of our marketing does that as well, right? So by having that interest, by putting the customer first, you're being part of their journey, you're being that guide and, showing them how to get it, right? So this whole sentence really resonated with me, and it stuck with me to the point that I actually have it printed out now and I put it on my wall. So yeah, that was by far and away my favorite quote from the book.
There's, I would say, probably 3 or 4 people on the team that actually highlighted that quote in the book report. So that's
what we do, right? That's exactly what it is that we do.
So in the interest of working on my active listening and non-interrupting skills, Khalil, I'm gonna go back to you because I did a little interruption action.
Sorry, Khalil.
No worries. All good, guys. Yeah, so the other one was act and speak cheerfully. So like, this is something my dad always used to tell me, is when you're answering the phone, smile. And I've totally not done that since he told me that. And this is like a gentle reminder to actually do that. So because it's like your physiology, right? Your body, if you're sitting up nicely, you're going to be speaking a little bit better. You're going to be speaking more confidently. If you're slumped over, your body can tell, right? So it comes across very easily. So that was the one that kind of stood out to me, is to just have a little smile when you're talking to people. So
the best way to deliver bad news is with a smile on your face. Trust me, I've done it a few times. So okay, good. Other lessons learned. Sonali, did you have any lessons you wanted to share? Any further ones?
Well, I had so many. I guess all of us spoke about it by now. But yeah, I'll just Riaz, I'll go back to the overall kind of theme of the book. Yes, it is about, like, as we started this discussion, that like this book has a lot of common sense, but it is also important for us to kind of acknowledge our shortcomings, right? Like everything, all the learnings in this book will not be useful if we are not reading it with an open mind, right? Like we can just read it and forget about it and not apply it at all unless we kind of realize that what are our individual shortcomings and where do we need to work. So I think that will be overall a huge kind of learning for me, especially for me, because there are a lot of things in this book, but you have to figure out like a personal strategically what you can apply for yourself, right? Like, for example, we all know what we are good at and what we are not that great at. For example, like smile part, I keep on smiling like all the time, but in terms of like listening, maybe I need to do a better job. Like, I'm just giving an example, right? So self-awareness and kind of realizing yourself that how you are going to having that open mind, that what you can apply is kind of very, very important. Yeah.
Appreciate that. It's good. It's very good. Okay, other lessons. Other lessons.
I have a quote.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, V. Or sorry, Vasvi. No.
It's fine. No, I was just like, as I was in the middle of this book, like a thought occurred to me where I was like, we've read, I think 4 books now,
5.
and I want 5. Okay, well, I'm not on the new one. Still, okay. Anyway, we've read countless books because clearly I can't count them right now. But I was just thinking, like, do I actually recall like the things that we've been like reading in previous books? And I thought of the first book that we read, the Your Next 5 Moves, and the awareness. And like when Sonali mentioned awareness, I just wanted to like maybe talk about like how that ties into this one. Because this book, when I was reading it, I was trying to be aware of where I need the most work. And to me, that was like the clarity, the listening and the interest part. So that's where, in one of the 3 lessons, I just said listening more. And it's like a very vague sentence, but I want to make sure that I listen like in not just a client call, but like to the teammates, to like most people I interact with. But that was like a big lesson. And I'm glad this ties really well with like the other books we've been reading. Yeah, sorry, Matthias.
M, that's M to you.
No worries,
M.
Vasvi.
Sorry,
Maddie.
sorry, M.
How dare you?
Maddie. He's slowly become Maddie though. There you go.
That's what friends and family call me. So go right ahead, guys.
Oh,
I just had a quote that I really liked. It's every man/woman I meet is my superior in some way, in that I learn of him/her. I think that really resonates with just keeping an open mind and, you know, remembering that you can learn something from every single person. We're all different. And yeah, I really like that message.
Guys, sorry, Riaz,
No worries.
just Matthias, what you said like right now, I just think one of another important lesson which I really liked is how to kind of give feedback, or like the whole kind of chapter about the criticism and how you can go ahead and that can make or break a person, right? Like how if you criticize a person in a wrong way, that can totally kill a person's ambition, you know. That was I think was very, very powerful, and that is so true, because like come to think of it, like I know there's a sentence there where it says like and we have been taught about it, how you should criticize in kind of private and praise in public, something like that. I think that was the theme of that chapter, and I think that's very, very powerful. Yeah.
Good. Quotables. It's time for quotables. So let's we'll kind of go around, because I know some of us have already been sharing some of the quotes that we like from the book. But are there any others that we want to, because there are a lot of quotables in the book, any that stand out that haven't been shared?
I have another one I haven't shared yet. And this is a good one because it made me really, really think, and it wasn't as like easy as the sales one, but it's distrust your first instinctive impression. And that for me is an area to work on. I mean, aside from interrupting people, but distrusting your first instinctive impression is actually really smart, because a lot of times you have preconceived notions about something, right? And you meet somebody for the first time, or you see something for the first time, and you instantly draw conclusions based on your experience. And it kind of goes back to empathy and learning and putting yourself in other people's shoes, is that you need to almost change your mindset sometimes. So by distrusting your first impression of something, it allows you to kind of take a step back and then look at it again. And then you may completely change the way you think about whatever that first impression is. So this was a different one for me, because the other ones are all very simple and I can apply them to my life, but I really had to think about that one, because sometimes we're just way too quick to draw conclusions on something. And that's why I added to my quotables, because it really jumped out at me and made me think.
Great. That's a great one.
I have one that kind of ties into the one, the same kind of lesson that Paul mentioned. And the quote is, "Don't complain about the snow on your neighbor's roof when your doorstep is unclean." And the way I interpret this, there's like kind of like two lessons for me. One is like being open-minded and like, understanding where the other person is coming from, and just being like genuinely interested to find out why that person is acting that way or responding that way. So like when you're looking over at someone else's roof, why is their roof not clean? And why perhaps maybe they don't want it to be clean. They don't value a clean roof, or maybe they are having trouble cleaning their roof and perhaps maybe they might need help. So like, it's like kind of like figuring out why what the reason is why their roof is not clean of snow. And then the second interpretation of that quote for me is just kind of like stay in my own lane type of thing, where it's like, don't worry about what other people are doing, and just kind of like focus on yourself and like not like do the comparison type of thing. So that to me was like a kind of like that kind of like hit me.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think it's a really good one, because I think sometimes when that type of criticism happens, it's really to like mask our own insecurities, so we're like looking for faults in others, but it's really to mask our own insecurity, and we might be in an even worse kind of situation. So I absolutely kind of appreciate that thought process. Cool. Other quotables? One last quotable. Roy? Oh, you're on mute.
How's that?
Good. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. If you want to make enemies, excel your friends. If you want friends, let your friends excel you. In other words, build your friends up, listen to their accomplishments, don't boast about your own, mention your achievements only when asked. So it's sort of the idea of being humble, and like and also the same core principles of letting the other person talk about themselves, because and being genuinely interested in like acknowledging their achievements and not necessarily boasting about your own.
Mm-hmm. I think like comparison as a theme, it's a very dangerous road to go down. Like I really try my best to avoid comparison in my own world, at least, because it would be very easy to say, like, to compare yourself to, when I was a salesperson to another salesperson, when you're a strategist to compare yourself to another strategist, when as a business owner to compare myself to another business owner. But I feel like doing that, it almost it kind of like diminishes your view of what is possible. And that's not to say that it's not important to like pay attention to the competition, or to have like a healthy challenge between salespeople or strategists or what have you. But I've always found that it leads to small thinking. But when you think about yourself in terms of like not really like in your own lane, in your own journey, it's more of like life. It's more of a golf game where you're playing against yourself and your own score, right? And I think for me at least, when I started to think more like that, I concerned myself less about how well or not others are doing, and it allowed me to start kind of just focusing on saying, hey, you know what, like, yeah, I mean, I can't lift as much as the big person over there at the gym, but you know, I'm happy that I'm doing better than I was, you know, last week, or I'm running, you know, 6K instead of 5K, or you're right. So I think too often, and this happens a lot, where we see someone has some achieved or amassed some great achievement, and we think, oh, we're never going to get there. Well, you probably won't, to be honest. So why even worry about it when you can just worry about being better than you were the day before, right?
I saw this TikTok. I'm a millennial. It was this guy giving a speech, and I almost fell off my chair. I didn't, but I felt like I did. He was basically saying how like it was a story about I don't know, the olden times or something, but the analogy was basically like it was a man walking with another person in the forest, and the one guy was really stressed about how they were going to get to the place. And the other person was just basically, he just tells him like, do you see your next step? And he said, yes. And it's like, okay, well, you know, basically saying one step at a time. I don't know why I'm making this so much more complicated than it actually is, but I really love that, because sometimes you get so stuck into like next year or the year ahead or whatever, 2 months, but you really just got to focus on what you can do right now. What's the next step, rather than just overthinking everything, as I feel like a lot of people do. So
you can achieve so much. I think going back to the comparison argument, or not argument, but theme, it kind of really clicked for me when I heard one of my uncles talking about, you know, whether you're kind of the richest person in the world, or you're a homeless person, or you're the healthiest person, or you're the sickest person, it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, you still have 24 hours in a day, right? So the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you going to do with those 24 hours, right? Because you can't change your situation. You can't change your situation, but you can't change kind of the hand you're dealt, but you can still, but everyone has a similar hand in the sense that we all have 24 hours. So what are you going to do with those 24 hours? And I think that really stuck with me a lot, actually, to where now I feel like I can do a lot in a little bit of time. Cool, good. Okay, so we should move on to the final part, which is lessons that we're going to apply. Things that we're going to apply going forward. So knowing all that we do now, what are we going to apply going forward? So this could be on client calls, it could be on prospecting calls, it could be with each other, it could be, or just in general. Bless you.
For me is making sure that I'm able to listen, and that I'm also able to use the same words that our clients use, because that also helps for them to feel heard. And another step for me is remembering to bring up the goals that we have in common with the client that we're working with, in case there's been like a misunderstanding or anything like that, just to let us focus on what's coming next. So I think those are big things for me after reading this book.
Good. Thank you, Jackie.
Oh my God, Jackie, you are one of the best listeners. I don't know what you're talking about. I've ever met in my life. Yeah, seriously, genuinely, you are.
Thank you. I'm glad. I think it's also my responsibility to. So thank you for letting me know.
See, that was genuine, sincere listening and feedback on Sonali's part. So that's her lesson. She's already applied her lesson just now in real time. So good. Other lessons that we're going to apply? Or how we're going to apply?
Names, definitely.
Names, yeah. We're not spelling anyone's name wrong ever again.
No, I have about 4 pages of us in my notebook.
It is Matthias, right? It is Matthias.
Yeah.
Oh, it has to be now.
It better be now.
Matias in Spanish for me.
There you go.
Matias.
There you go. That's how my mom says it. Which I love. My lesson, 25% talking, 75% listening. I thought that was a good formula for having a well-balanced conversation, especially with a client. Yeah.
That's going to be a big task for me. That's a big challenge for me.
25% only talking.
Okay. If I can do that. I'll try though. I'll try. Other ways we're going to apply, Vasi? You seem like you're going to.
Listening more, definitely. Like that was one of the things. But another was like, I really like the chapter where like that was about leadership. Like when they were talking about don't criticize at all, I'm like, okay, well, how do you get your point across? But then there were like a lot of things like questions, not making people feel like doers, which I really liked. And I don't know how much I did it, so I need to maybe go back and look at my Asana test and see what language I used. But like every time I give feedback, like I usually try to not be very harsh and start with a positive, but like this book gave a good formula, like start with a positive. Then instead of saying, this is really good, but we need to fix that. But instead of just saying, this is really good, and we can change the, like, what do you think of this button? Like, can we change it to something that stands out more? Like, that's much better to say, this is really good, but can we change the button to XYZ color? Like, so like doing more of that. So yeah, like, and also the fundamentals. Like, I think I'm not very good at common sense. So the first chapter was like really eye-opening to me. I'm like, oh, you need to show interest in this thing to get interest back. That makes sense. But I like never thought of it. So that's more like a general lesson that I want to apply, not just to client calls, but like within the team, outside of work. Like it was eye-opening. So yeah, and referring to the book. So I read a like PDF and an audiobooks. I had like two, but I did not have a physical copy. But after reading it, I realized that I would love to have a physical copy so I can go back to it. So it was really good.
I'm glad you said about the leadership questions, because how many of you have heard me after a call with a client or prospect, or even with someone on the team, say, how do you think that went? Right? How do you think that went? That's kind of like my go-to. How do you think that went? Oh, and usually, of course, I already have a nugget in my head of how it went, right? But I'm not just saying, hey, that was, because there's usually good and there's usually opportunities for improvement as well.
And I like that question, Riaz, because you allow also yourself to see things from another perspective first.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I like when you ask that question. Mm-hmm.
I also think like it's a good practice to do for yourselves, for like personally and like for the team, but also with like the client as well. So like maybe at the end of an engagement or a contract or whatnot, it's like going back and reflecting with the client to see what was done well and what was not done well and what could be done better, and to nurture and make a better relationship with that customer, and maybe for the next project.
It's a good point, actually. It's a good point, because I think often we look at things in black and white, right? As if it was like, it was either really good or really bad. It's usually like somewhere in the middle, right? So I think by dissecting and kind of breaking down, okay, these were the things that were good and these are the things that are bad in any situation, then it kind of de-emphasizes the catastrophization. We kind of like overwhelm ourselves by thinking it's either yes or no, good or bad.
And like not waiting for like a negative situation to do the reflection, like not waiting for somebody to disengage with us and then doing the reflection. But like if we did something, if we finished an engagement and it went well, we should still reflect on what went well and what didn't went well, because there are probably things that didn't go well during that process that we overcame.
So many opportunities to learn, right? And I think sometimes I'm a bit afraid of it, because I'm like afraid of what I'm going to hear. So that's something I'm going to work on, which is like being more open to feedback and implementing that. Okay, other lessons or other things that we're going to apply?
In terms of copywriting, the quote that Paul actually mentioned is also one that I had in here, which was the only way on earth to influence other people is to talk about what they want and show them how to get it, which really resonates because like in the copywriting world, you're having like that before and like that after, and it's like, hey, like this is your problem, like this is how this product or service is gonna like get you to this awesome place that you want to be. And so that it popped out and I was like, oh yes, this is really good, and I'm gonna be keeping that quote in the back of my mind every time I go to write something. So
Good. Okay, well, I think we will kind of wrap there. I think this was a really good conversation. It was fun. I'm glad everyone made a good laugh today. So that was fun. Yeah, how to win friends and influence people. Vasvi, I will gift you this copy. You can have this copy. Since you want a physical copy, there you go. That's yours. But I get to call you V.
That's the payment. I'm kidding. It's fine.
that's the appease and influence coming in right there. So our next book, which we're already reading because it's halfway through January, it's a little bit different actually. It's more self-reflection, more spiritual almost, and it's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It is not this book that I'm about to show you because this is the addition to that book. This is called Practicing the Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which I'm also kind of reading because I like both of them. But it's The Power of Now. It's a different book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. So it looks different. It has like yellow and green at the top. So don't get confused. We're reading that this month. And then in February, we are reading The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, which I think we announced in December as well. So if you're watching and following along with our book of the month, please pick those books up. And next month we will become very spiritual and self-aware, go deep. We'll go deep and go shallow, and we'll learn a lot about perhaps ourselves and each other at the same time. All right. Thank you so much for watching. We will check you out next month, and hope you're enjoying the book of the month. We are certainly enjoying it, so keep tuning in. All right. Take care.